Have you ever walked into your garden, excited to pick what looked like the perfect tomato, only to discover a deep split running across the fruit? One day it was smooth, round, and beautiful. The next day, it looked like someone had taken a knife to it. If this has happened to you, don't worry, you are far from alone. Tomato cracking is one of the most common problems gardeners face, whether they're growing a few plants in containers or managing a large vegetable garden. The surprising part is that cracked tomatoes are usually not caused by diseases or insects. In fact, most cracking happens because of the way the fruit grows. Once you understand why it happens, preventing it becomes much easier. In today's video, you'll learn exactly why tomatoes crack, the science behind the problem, and the simple gardening habits that can dramatically reduce cracking all season long. We'll also cover which tomato varieties crack the most, whether cracked tomatoes are still safe to eat, and the small mistakes many gardeners make without realizing it. By the end of this video, you'll know how to harvest beautiful, healthy tomatoes with fewer losses and better flavor. Let's begin. What exactly is tomato cracking? Tomato cracking occurs when the skin of the fruit cannot stretch fast enough to keep up with the flesh expanding inside. Think of blowing up a balloon. As the balloon fills with air, the rubber stretches. But if you add too much air too quickly, eventually it bursts because the material can't expand any farther. Tomato skin works much the same way. The inside of the tomato absorbs water rapidly, expands, and creates pressure against the skin. If the skin isn't flexible enough or if expansion happens too quickly, the fruit splits open. This is why cracking often seems to happen overnight. You may check your tomatoes in the evening, and by morning several fruits have cracked. After a night of rain or heavy watering, the plant isn't sick. The tomato simply grew faster than its skin could handle. Two main types of tomato cracks. Not all cracks look the same. Understanding the difference helps identify what caused them. Radial cracks. These are long cracks that start near the stem and extend downward toward the bottom of the tomato. Sometimes they're only an inch long. Other times they stretch almost the entire fruit. Radial cracks are usually the result of sudden water uptake after the soil has been dry. The tomato rapidly fills with moisture, pressure builds inside, and the skin splits from the top. These cracks are often deep enough to expose the flesh. Concentric cracks. These appear as circles or rings around the stem. Instead of long splits, you'll notice shallow cracks forming circular patterns. Concentric cracking often develops while the fruit is still growing. Temperature swings, genetics, and uneven moisture all contribute. Although these cracks may look alarming, they are often more cosmetic than serious. Many gardeners simply cut away the affected area before eating the fruit. Are cracked tomatoes safe to eat? This is one of the questions gardeners ask most often. The answer is yes, but with one important condition. If the crack is fresh, clean, and shows no signs of mold, rot, insects, or unpleasant odor, the tomato is perfectly safe. Simply cut away the damaged section. The remaining fruit tastes just as delicious. However, once the crack has been exposed for several days, bacteria, fungi, and insects can enter the opening. If you notice soft spots, black mold, sour smells, leaking juice, or insect damage, it's best to discard the fruit. Whenever possible, harvest cracked tomatoes immediately before secondary problems begin. Why cracking usually happens right before harvest? Many gardeners notice that green tomatoes rarely crack. Instead, the problem appears just as fruits begin turning red. There's a good reason. As tomatoes ripen, several changes happen inside the fruit. The flesh becomes softer. Sugars increase. Water content changes. Most importantly, the skin gradually loses some of its elasticity. That means ripe tomatoes simply cannot stretch as much as young green fruits. So if heavy rain arrives just before harvest, the roots suddenly absorb large amounts of water. The fruit swells rapidly. The skin cannot expand. The tomato splits. That's why many gardeners experience cracking after summer thunderstorms. The timing isn't random. It's directly related to fruit maturity. Rain is often the biggest trigger. Imagine this situation. For 5 days, the weather is hot and dry. The soil slowly loses moisture. Your tomato plant continues growing, but at a slower pace. Then a thunderstorm drops 2 inches of rain overnight. Suddenly, the roots absorb enormous amounts of water. Within hours, that water moves directly into developing fruits. The inside expands faster than the skin. Cracks appear. This explains why gardeners often believe rain caused the cracking. Technically, it wasn't the rain itself. It was the sudden change from dry soil to saturated soil. Rapid changes, not simply water alone, are the real culprit. Dry soil followed by heavy watering. The exact same thing happens when gardeners forget to water for several days. The soil dries out. Plants become slightly stressed. Then, feeling guilty, they soak the garden with a huge amount of water. Although the intention is good, the sudden flood produces the same effect as heavy rainfall. Tomatoes quickly absorb the available moisture. The fruit swells faster than the skin can stretch. The result is splitting. Ironically, inconsistent watering often causes more cracking than underwatering itself. Regular, moderate watering is far healthier than alternating between drought and flooding. Now that you understand how and why tomatoes split, it's time to focus on prevention. The good news is that you don't need expensive products or complicated techniques. Most cracked tomatoes are the result of inconsistent growing conditions, and by making a few simple adjustments, you can dramatically reduce the problem. Let's start with the single most important factor. 1. Keep soil moisture consistent. If there is one secret that experienced tomato growers swear by, it's consistency. Tomatoes thrive when the soil stays evenly moist, not soaking wet and not bone dry. When moisture levels fluctuate dramatically, the fruit experiences rapid cycles of expansion, which places tremendous stress on the skin. Instead of watering only when the plants look wilted, water before they become stressed. In most gardens, this means watering deeply 2 or 3 times each week, depending on your climate, soil type, and rainfall. Sandy soils dry much faster than clay soils, so they usually require more frequent watering. The goal is simple: avoid sudden extremes. A plant that receives steady moisture produces stronger roots, healthier foliage, and tomatoes that are much less likely to crack. 2. Water deeply instead of lightly. Many gardeners make the mistake of giving their tomatoes a quick splash every day. Unfortunately, shallow watering encourages shallow roots. Shallow roots dry out quickly, making the plant much more sensitive to changing weather. Instead, water slowly and deeply. Allow the moisture to soak several inches into the ground where the main root system develops. Deep roots help the plant access moisture even during hot weather, reducing sudden swings in water availability. A slow soak is always better than frequent light watering. 3. Mulch is one of the best defenses. If your tomatoes aren't mulched, you're making life much harder than it needs to be. A layer of organic mulch works like a protective blanket over the soil. It slows evaporation, keeps the soil cooler during hot afternoons, reduces weed growth, and helps maintain consistent moisture. Excellent mulch materials include straw, shredded leaves, grass clippings that haven't been treated with herbicides, compost, pine needles, fine wood chips aged for several months. Apply about 2 to 4 inches of mulch around each plant, leaving a small gap around the stem to reduce the risk of stem rot. Besides preventing cracking, mulch often improves overall tomato production throughout the season. 4. Harvest tomatoes at the right time. Many people wait until tomatoes become fully ripe on the vine. While vine-ripened tomatoes are delicious, leaving fruit on the plant too long increases the chance of cracking, especially when rainy weather is in the forecast. Professional growers often harvest tomatoes at the breaker stage. This is when the fruit begins changing from green to pink, orange, or light red. At this point, the tomato has already developed most of its flavor. It can finish ripening safely indoors while avoiding damage from sudden rainstorms. You'll still enjoy excellent taste while reducing losses. 5. Protect plants during heavy rain. Of course, we can't control the weather, but we can reduce its impact. If prolonged rain is expected, consider using simple protective covers that keep excessive water away from the soil. Some gardeners install temporary plastic shelters above tomato rows. Others grow tomatoes inside hoop houses or greenhouses. Even a simple overhead cover can reduce rapid water absorption after major storms. The key is allowing good airflow while preventing the soil from becoming completely saturated. 6. Choose crack-resistant varieties. Not all tomatoes behave the same. Some varieties naturally resist cracking much better than others because of thicker, more flexible skin. Many modern hybrid varieties have been specifically bred for crack resistance. Several popular examples include Celebrity, Mountain Fresh, Defiant, Big Beef, Juliet grape tomatoes. Many cherry tomatoes also resist cracking better than large beefsteak types because their smaller fruits experience less internal pressure. That doesn't mean heirloom tomatoes are bad. In fact, many heirlooms have exceptional flavor. However, they often have thinner skins, making them more prone to splitting during periods of uneven watering. Knowing this allows you to adjust your watering routine even more carefully. 7. Avoid excess nitrogen late in the season. Fertilizer helps tomatoes grow, but too much of the wrong fertilizer can create problems. High nitrogen fertilizers encourage rapid leafy growth. When excessive growth occurs alongside abundant water, fruits may enlarge very quickly. Rapid fruit expansion increases pressure against the skin. Instead, once flowering begins, switch to a fertilizer formulated for tomatoes, with balanced nutrients and adequate phosphorus and potassium. Healthy, balanced growth produces stronger plants and more consistent fruit development. 8. Healthy leaves help protect fruit. Leaves do much more than produce energy. They also shade developing tomatoes from intense afternoon sun. Excessive heat can toughen or weaken tomato skin, making it less flexible during sudden growth. Avoid removing too many healthy leaves unless absolutely necessary. Good airflow is important, but plants still need enough foliage to protect fruit naturally. Finding the right balance helps reduce several common tomato problems, not just cracking. Don't panic after finding a few cracked tomatoes. Even expert gardeners occasionally harvest cracked fruit. Weather is unpredictable. Sudden storms happen. No garden is perfect. The goal isn't to eliminate every crack. The goal is to reduce cracking enough that the vast majority of your harvest remains healthy and attractive. If only a few tomatoes crack during an unusually wet week, you're probably doing everything right. Now that we've covered the main causes of tomato cracking and the best prevention methods, let's go a step further. These advanced tips are often overlooked, yet they can make the difference between an average tomato harvest and one filled with smooth, beautiful fruit. Monitor your garden after every rainfall. One of the best habits you can develop is simply paying attention to your garden after a heavy rain. Tomatoes can crack within just a few hours after absorbing a sudden surge of water. Walk through your garden the morning after a storm and inspect every plant. Harvest any tomatoes that are beginning to ripen, even if they aren't fully red yet. They will continue ripening indoors and are far less likely to split further or develop mold. A 5-minute garden inspection can save pounds of perfectly good tomatoes. Water early in the morning. The time of day you water also matters. Morning watering gives plants plenty of time to absorb moisture before the hottest part of the day while allowing leaves to dry quickly. Watering late in the evening may leave foliage damp overnight, increasing the risk of fungal diseases. Midday watering is less efficient because much of the moisture evaporates before it reaches the roots. A regular morning schedule creates more stable growing conditions and helps prevent sudden moisture stress. Container tomatoes need extra attention. If you grow tomatoes in pots or raised containers, cracking can become even more common. Containers hold much less soil than a garden bed, so they dry out much faster during hot weather. On a sunny summer day, the soil in a container can become dry by afternoon, even if it was watered that morning. Then, when watered heavily, the fruit absorbs moisture very quickly. To avoid this, check soil moisture every day. Use larger containers whenever possible. Add mulch to the surface of the pot. Choose high-quality potting mix that retains moisture without becoming waterlogged. Container-grown tomatoes often need smaller but more frequent watering than garden-grown plants. Don't blame yourself for every cracked tomato. Many gardeners become discouraged after seeing cracked fruit. They assume they've done something wrong. In reality, even experienced growers lose some tomatoes to cracking each year. Commercial farms, botanical gardens, and professional market growers all experience the same issue when weather changes suddenly. Gardening isn't about perfection. It's about creating conditions that allow plants to thrive most of the time. If you've maintained consistent watering, used mulch, selected suitable varieties, and harvested at the right stage, you've already done nearly everything possible. Sometimes nature simply wins. Common mistakes that increase tomato cracking. Let's quickly review several mistakes that often lead to split tomatoes. Mistake number 1. Letting the soil become completely dry before watering. Mistake number 2. Giving the plants huge amounts of water after several dry days. Mistake number 3. Leaving ripe tomatoes on the vine during long rainy periods. Mistake number 4. Growing crack-prone varieties without adjusting watering habits. Mistake number 5. Leaving the soil uncovered instead of using mulch. Mistake number 6. Applying excessive nitrogen fertilizer after fruit begins developing. Each mistake may seem minor on its own, but together they greatly increase the likelihood of cracking. Fortunately, each one is easy to correct. A few professional tips. Many experienced gardeners follow a few extra practices that consistently produce better tomatoes. First, install a simple rain gauge. Knowing exactly how much rain your garden has received helps you decide when additional watering is truly necessary. Second, check soil moisture with your finger before watering. If the soil is still moist a couple of inches below the surface, wait another day. Third, harvest frequently. Don't allow ripe tomatoes to remain on the plant longer than necessary. Frequent harvesting not only reduces cracking but also encourages many tomato varieties to continue producing new fruit. Finally, keep records. Write down which tomato varieties cracked the least, which watering schedule worked best, and how weather affected your harvest. After only 1 or 2 seasons, you'll develop a growing strategy perfectly suited to your own garden. The big takeaway. Tomato cracking isn't usually caused by disease, pests, or poor quality seeds. It's almost always the result of sudden changes in water availability combined with the natural limits of tomato skin. Fortunately, prevention is straightforward. Keep soil moisture consistent. Water deeply and regularly. Mulch generously. Choose crack-resistant varieties whenever possible. Harvest tomatoes before major rainstorms. Avoid sudden cycles of drought followed by flooding. These simple habits can dramatically reduce fruit cracking while improving the overall health of your plants. Final thoughts. Growing tomatoes is one of the most rewarding parts of gardening. Few things compare to picking a sun-ripened tomato from your own backyard and enjoying its incredible flavor. A few cracked tomatoes shouldn't discourage you. Instead, treat them as a sign that your plants are growing vigorously and that a few adjustments in watering and timing may be needed. Every season teaches something new. The more you observe your plants, the more successful your future harvests will become. If you found this video helpful, give it a thumbs up and share it with another gardener who struggles with cracked tomatoes. Subscribe to the channel for more practical gardening tips, proven growing techniques, and simple solutions that help you grow healthier vegetables, bigger harvests, and a more productive garden. Thanks for watching, and happy gardening.